So thank you also for today. Our topic is going to be on how to prevent the people issues from doing your M&A transactions. And we have two wonderful speakers that's going to give their insights and their background. And it's going to be an open discussion. It's probably going to be going for about 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to open up for dialogue. So at this time, I'd like to introduce both of our speakers. Dr. Schaefer, many of you know, he's a sounding board for many CEOs. He's well known here on Long Island. He's done a lot of business and has clients across the country, internationally for that matter, in South America, Asia, and US and Europe rather. He works with a lot of clients, and he's going to share his stories with some of the athletes and so on that he worked with. Before we move on to our next speaker, Dan, you mind making a quick introduction to yourself, and then we can pass it over to Dr. Miller.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for setting this up, Kyle. Basically, I'm a business and sports psychologist. I help people separate themselves in a competition very, very quickly. With the M&A world, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about this offline because there's not enough time here. But I was in the middle of working with senior executives from Hewlett Packard when I merged with Compaq, the Comcast merger, some mergers of hospitals in the city. And I personally sold 225-year-old businesses and walked out of 2 closings, which I'd be happy to tell you about why that happened. But in any event, my information is in the chat, and I'm willing to look forward to working with you together. And Marc and I have spoken a lot about this, and I think we're on the same page. So I look forward to getting into this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. And Dr. Miller, I'm very delighted to have you on board. I know you take a slightly different approach to Dr. Schaefer, but so Dr. Miller is a Ph.D. as well and a certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, which is the largest professional coaching. He's also a professional coaching trainer.
Coaching organization in the world.
The largest coaching organization in the world. Okay.
Right.
Got it. Thanks for the correction. And there's probably a lot of stuff on here we need to fill in. There's a lot of space here. I know there's a lot that you could actually fill in. So apart from being a past president of the Long Island chapter of the International Coaching Federation, tell us a bit more about your background, Dr. Miller.
Okay. I think, Dan and I share the Ph.D. After our names, but I think our background and experience really vary. He has 10 years on me, I found out the other day. So I don't think that explains it all. My background is clinical psychology. For many years, I was a psychotherapist. And then I kind of got burnt out and tired and found out about coaching, which is similar to psychotherapy, but the focus is much more positive on people's strengths. And working with coaching clients does not imply anything being wrong with them. It rather focuses on how can I help them get better and reach the next level of success. So coming to M&A is something I'm very happy that I have been able to do over the past several months. Working in the business space and working with executives and business owners is part of what I've been doing for quite a few years at this point. But the focus that Dan and I are going to have in what we're going to be just chatting about is how can the psychological, emotional, interpersonal issues that we all as human beings have, how can that get in the way at some point, often crucial moments in a business deal, including M&A kind of deals, that can sabotage what's going to happen and undermine the deal. So understanding people, understanding what triggers them, understanding where their strengths really can be developed to be more aware of what's going on, and specifically what happens during M&A and other business transactions is really what Dan and I are going to be talking about.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And let's get Dan in here. Let me set this up, okay? There's a lot of stuff that me as intermediary and many of the advisors here, there's a lot of stuff we just cannot explain that we seems to be out of our control. Scenarios where we think it's perfect. Like, for example, I'm selling this distribution company. The buyer came in at full price, full ask, everything. It's a $17 million transaction. The buyer was willing to fly in to meet with the owner to discuss and review and do a site visit. And the owner was like, I'm interested in meeting the buyer, but let's hold off a little bit. And many of you guys know it in the deal making space, buyers are looking at a lot of deals. They're flying around, they're doing a lot of things. In this case, what I perceive the issue was in this case, and I may be wrong, but I think we're good sense in this, because he came in with his initial offer at full price, he believes he could probably get a little bit more. So he wants to hold off, get the new numbers in and ask. And he did call me back. He said the numbers came in, we're way up from last year and even a year before. And it's something I've seen a lot where when you get an offer, a pretty good offer too early on in the transaction, the seller psychologically thinks, well, wait, maybe I'm selling the business for a lot less. And I've seen cases where they have turned it down and they never got as good an offer and they never sold the business afterwards. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I just throw it out there. I've been doing this for a long time. I could give tons of scenarios, and maybe you guys who are on the call here as well can as well. But take it away. I want to hear, let Dr. Dan and Mark, what are your thoughts, and kick things off for us.
Well, I don't know if Austin is on the line, but if anybody would like to read a great article that Austin posted about deals collapsing, I think it's a great piece that he put out there. I guess the question is, there's a timeline and a process of when a deal starts and when it ends, when it closes. Mark and I talked a lot about, and I believe we agree that the sooner you're able to pick up an obstacle or a mistake that could be made, the better off you are. I think I've talked to Kyle that once a deal starts to slide, sometimes you can't stop the slide. And so it really comes back down to thinking particularly about, and you'll be surprised to notice that as you go into a business deal that you intend to close, the question comes back is, am I missing anything? Most of the stuff that Mark and I deal with is really invisible in a deal. You may get a sense internally that something's off, but at the end of the day, it's what's missing that will knock you out. And those derails can cost the buyer and seller, and it can certainly cost the M&A professional a fortune in money. So I just ask you to think about deals that have collapsed, what it costs you to have those deals collapse, and if you could redo anything and go back and do it over again, what would you do?
Okay, so let me jump off of what Dan just said. What makes us, Dan and I, with our PhDs, does that really make us any more able to read people's minds and figure out what's going to derail a deal early on? Maybe Dan could do that. I can't. I'm not a mind reader, but and I know he has some talents that I don't, and I think I have some that he does, and we complement one another in that. But for you guys, for most of the people on the screen who are very involved with deal making, financial considerations that are way over my head and my pay grade, even if you don't have a sense that things are starting to slide, as Dan said, once they start to slide, sometimes that can't be stopped. It's kind of like an avalanche. But bringing us in early on in a process allows us, each in our own way, we each have our own methods, but the way I talk to people, the way I try to do a discovery is looking at what's going on for the different people involved in the transaction. If somebody owns a business, if it's an individual, for example, who has owned a business, developed a business, it's their baby, they're getting to a point in life where they want to sell their business. I mean, that's almost like a perfect setup for a great deal, but it's also a perfect setup for cold feet, or what about my legacy? Or what about, what's going to happen to this company that I have nurtured for 40 years or whatever? What's going to happen once it's in somebody else's hands? Oftentimes people don't, when they're selling a business, don't want to share that information with their talent, their staff, the people who really give a tremendous amount of value to their business. When do you talk to your staff? When do you, and very specifically, when do you talk to the people who are really a very big asset to your company, and that is part of the value that you're selling? How do you do that? Those are difficult conversations, and people get scared. I don't want to tell people too soon. They're gonna, start sabotaging things. They're gonna undermine things, whatever it is. What kind of relationship does the owner, if it's an individual, have with his or her employees? These are issues that Doug Rowe gets involved with on a legal level at some points, but our perspective is more, how do you tap into what's going on for that person who is in the position of wanting to sell, and that's crucial to your M&A transaction, but there may be underlying issues that's going to get in the way. And the closer you get to the finish line, the more acute it's going to be, the more that panic may set in. So if we can come in and look at things and figure out things and discuss things earlier, it can prevent those kind of mishaps from happening.
I think there's also an aversion with both of us being PhDs and psychologists to turn around to somebody who you're trying to involve in a deal and say, I'd like you to speak to a psychologist. I don't see that happening in many ways at all. But I will tell you that preparation for competition is really important, and that's been raised to the level through this whole organization of how do you use the people in this organization to prepare to compete. The question is what's in the way, what's invisible, and when is it time to talk to us? We agree that for my practice, if somebody said to me, I'd like you to look at an M&A situation that I have going on, I'd like to see the organizational chart before you even start, before you talk to anybody, because it can go completely south. I mean, I know that I was involved on a board with 2 major hospital mergers some years ago, and it was a slam dunk for both of them. But then what happened is one hospital started to, the staff and key staff started to talk about, we're taking these people over. They diminished them. It really got to the point where they said, we don't want to deal with these people anymore. And they walked on it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that the confidentiality here is absolutely critical. I mean, I had one guy who came to me who said that he wanted to improve his golf game. And when I got into his office, he said, this is about a merger and acquisition, one of the biggest M&A deals going on in the country. And I've got 3 months to persuade 3 guys that I'm the guy to run this company. And when he got the position, I said to him, do you know anybody else like you? And he said, absolutely. I said, will you refer me? He says, no. He said, I can't tell anybody about you. So we are both very much under the radar, at least my practice is. And so I have a conversation with somebody, had a conversation with somebody this morning, and I said to them, this conversation never happened. So it's important that you know that there's a way for us to look at a deal even before you engage people. Somebody comes to you with a proposal and says, this is something we like to do. You could run it by us and say, what do you think here? What do we need to look out for? Because some of these mistakes are really invisible.
Yeah, it's almost like being a secret agent, right, Dan?
Yeah, something like that.
I would say that, one of the problems I have is, the work that I do is confidential, and, without asking for permission from a client or a client company, can I speak about this? I don't do that. Dan has some great stories, and maybe he's gotten those permission slips or whatever. But it is invisible, and people have a sense of shame, and saying psychologist. I generally don't even put that out there. I added Ph.D, PCC, professional certified coach, just for this presentation. I usually don't have that on there because people get intimidated and they do think that this means I'm crazy, or, and part of why I'm a coach, not a therapist anymore, is I don't like diagnosing people and labeling people, but helping people feel comfortable, and normalizing the experiences that people have is crucial to the way I work. So anybody who is running a business, anybody who is working with that leadership team. I agree with Dan. I think seeing that org chart is really essential. Who are the important people? Who should be included in understanding what is going down, and how can they be helped, if possible, to be included in that transaction? Because if it comes out later, which it usually does, that, you know, it's a done deal if it gets to that point. Basically, people feel like they've been betrayed. What's going to happen to my job? And I wanted to talk about culture. We always hear about culture. The culture of an organization is so important. And it really adds to the value of organizations. If it's a really solid culture of teamwork, of people feeling engaged, of people feeling that they can communicate safely and with trust. And in those kind of situations, that's when people are most productive, most innovative. And that's part of the value of an organization, especially in this age that we're living in. How do you, when there is a merger that's about to happen, when there's an acquisition that's about to happen, and I'm sure all of you who've been involved in such things, how do the two organizations that become one, and usually one is the dominant one, the one that buys out the other one, how do you help them, how do we help them anticipate the difficulties that are inevitably going to happen in bringing those groups of people together? Inevitably, almost always, there are people who have to be let go because you're consolidating. How do you help people deal with that stress? Most of the time, those issues are avoided because they're uncomfortable. Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to talk to their staff about it. Nobody wants to think about it. And it's not your areas of expertise for the most part. Anticipating those kind of problems, working together with, whether it's the buyer organization or the seller organization, in anticipation of those transactions, can really make the process so much more smooth and prevent it from getting undermined.
When
Right.
HP was merging with Compaq, Carly Fiorina put together a group of psychologists to go around the world and deal with their senior executives, one level below her. And and they established a white room. I don't know how many companies do that, but a white room is they took members from each company, put them into a place where they couldn't communicate with anybody else, and they just kept everything when it to design this new company. Well, the anxiety on the part of the senior leadership, and one of my clients ran the Czech Republic. So it was like, what am I going to do if I don't get selected? And so we set up a strategy for him to go forward and to be able to use a variety of communication strategies to position himself to go either direction, to go with them if they took him or somewhere else. But it was just an amazing amount of support that we gave to these people who are in a leadership position, because their concern was not about the company. They're concerned about themselves. What's going to happen to me? And it ultimately comes back to that, what's going to happen to me, and how do you support people in that? I know when I talked to Kyle and I talked about a project a couple of years ago where he had a sale, and he said to me, the person who just sold the company is going to go in and inform and introduce the new owner to his staff in the office 2 days before the closing. And I said, you mean they don't know that the company was being sold? He said, no. So it was bizarre. This I couldn't even think in that format. I said, I can't imagine if they didn't go in with some type of an employment contract for the two IT guys who were running the whole company to give them a level of safety and security. Now, I don't know if, that's something that Doug would talk about or anybody else on that, but how do you let the people know, and how soon do you let them know that they're going to be part of the action?
Right. So, yeah.
Any questions? Is any questions come
Wait,
up?
let me just follow up with that for a moment, Dan. I just want to say that thinking about those human factors, I'm not saying that most of you don't do that. I'm sure you're all, I know you well enough from being in this group for several months that you're extremely bright, very competent, amazing people in the business world. And you have an awareness that culture matters, people matter. You get it. I would like to think that Dan and I bring a level of expertise that goes beyond that. Whether we can read the invisible or not, we can help clarify what factors are at play. Just as Dan said, the idea of letting your staff know 2 days before that the business is sold and here's your new boss, without thinking about how that's going to impact on those people. If the company is including those people in the transaction, how are they going to feel about not being informed? How are they going to feel about the insecurity of their jobs? How much is it worth to smooth that transition, invest some money in providing services, whether it's with us or with Jackie and her HR firm? There are different ways of addressing it, but preparing people. Because when you don't do that, when it sneaks up and it's a surprise, the situation can really get complicated. And that's dealing with staff. As I said before, dealing with the people who are directly involved in selling or buying their business are going to have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. It's about money and it's about business, but it's also about people.
Great points.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I think that I had mentioned before that when I sold 2 businesses, they were both tied in together. They were both 125 years old. I walked out of 2 closings. We were at the closing, and the other company that was purchasing my company, changed everything right at the closing table. And I said to my lawyer and my advisor, let's go. They said, do you want to use a conference room outside? I said, no. I said, we're out of here. Because I realized that if they were that duplicitous in the beginning, where was it going to go going further? And I've seen more of those deals happen where a guy who owned a manufacturing company in Midwest, who had gotten somebody to come in from England to buy the company, finally at the closing, he said to his advisor, I'm not going to give my families, the people who I built this business with, to these people. I'm not going to let them with their insensitivity in front of my clients. And so I said to them, I said, well, what were you selling? He said, we were selling a manufacturing company. I said, no, he was selling his child. He started the company. He nurtured it as it was growing. And it has to be thought about that way. So, but and the fact is that many people that I work with have one shot at the next deal. There's no do-overs, then let's go back. It's what you can say. There's only one shot. So if you come back to the way my football players prepare for competition, my baseball players prepare for competition, if you took that same competitive design and brought it into the business world, you'd find that things might go a lot more smoothly, and you don't have to worry about what's going to come up and hit me in the back of the head. And that's what happens. A lot of times people go, oh my God. So I would, on a private level after this, I'd love to have somebody tell me about deals that went south, and let's do a post-mortem on those deals and find out why they went south. But there are probably no 2 that are exactly alike.
Right.
I got a long list, Dan. We're gonna be here for like all day.
I had a lawyer say to me, I want you to help me with this firm out in Queens. It's a real estate firm. And he said, this guy runs it. It's a family business. He runs his family. When we finally started to look at it, you know who ran the company? His wife, who never went into the office once. She was the guiding factor in the whole process. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. It's a lot behind the scenes you don't know about until you start peeling back the onion. Jackie, I see you've been patiently waving your hand up. We don't get to some questions, comments, and feedback now. So Ms. Gurney, you're up next. First question.
Unmute, Jackie.
So Kyle, yours is an interesting scenario that you purported, because you are spending time initially selling the client on you, right? And while you're doing that, you're also trying to make sure that they're ready to sell mentally, which is what Marc and Dan are talking about. But again, I think it is maybe using some selling strategies upfront might help, as well as the psychological, trying to figure out psychologically upfront contracts. You know, we've been in situations where we have somebody, it gets to the end and they give us a full price offer, and the business owner starts backpedaling. And, you know, talking about that, how that's going to play out if that happens, Kyle. So that might kind of a different whole situation, because you're kind of switching the selling mode from selling yourself to then you're selling the company to someone else. Then you're selling back to selling the owner on why they should sell this company to the person that you found, right? So you've got many sales scenarios going on and sales strategies to think about.
Yeah, normally what I do when I interview a prospective seller, prospective client, I have my buyer's hat on. You know, I am the buyer. I drill them as if I am the buyer. First of all, they need to sell me why I need to work with them, right? It's a mutual conversation back and forth, but at the same time, tell me about your business. Let me understand the dynamics, what's involved. Who owns a company? Did you start it? Did you buy it? Tell me more, the services you provide, the products you sell, and so on.
And all that's great. While a business owner is in selling you mode, is totally different psychologically, as Mark and Dan said, from where they are when you give them an offer, and now they have to make a decision. I see Susan is shaking her head.
Susan, you want to jump in?
Yes, because it becomes reality, right? Because there's a possibility that I might sell, and now it's become real. And sometimes they're not ready, as Jackie's alluding to, just psychologically. While they say they might want to sell, the real question is, are they super ready, and preparing them for their process? And I guess that's part of the job as advisors and working with people like Mark and Dan is to figure out, you know, where they are at in that process and tease it out. And it's not going to be on the surface. You have to go deep and ask questions in multiple different ways.
Exactly.
One of the things.
That's why Dan referred to it as it's the invisible stuff. But Dan, let me just finish this thought. To have that kind of conversation with somebody, you know, who is the seller, means that person really has to agree to that conversation. And even that conversation, for example, between Kyle, who's the guy involved in the transaction, and this seller, you know, how do you bring that up? How do you bring, you know, Dan or me or anybody else into a conversation where the goal is to dive deeper, to ask questions? As a coach, I ask questions. I don't give advice. I ask deeper questions. I reflect on what I'm hearing, but to try to get some clarity and to help them get some clarity about where they are in this cycle, in this process, as Susan said, and as Jackie said, it's a complex process, and it actually isn't static. It moves, it changes over time. I see Andy is
go ahead, Andy.
Well, yeah, what I was gonna mention is that, and I'm hearing that people don't understand really as much as they should what you guys bring to the table, and they're reticent to get involved. But I would figure that the person that's doing deal number 2 or 3 knows exactly what you bring to the table. And so maybe that's the target for you guys, is the guy is the business person who's selling their second company or buying their second company, because they are fully apprised of what benefit you guys can bring to the table.
And what I said in my intro of us on an M&A, we help the business owner, the seller, realize what they want to realize. And so if Kyle is bringing you in, that's exactly what you're trying to do is you're trying to help them realize the everything they can get from the sale, or by dealing with the soft stuff.
I think that what's interesting and what Mark brought up is, how do you make that transition? I think that people want to know what other people have done. And I'm sure you folks have heard me say that I sell mistakes. And everybody today is trying to, I'm sorry about this phone. Everybody.
Well, Dan, what I suggest is Kyle put it into his process. And it's just, you tell them up front, okay, this is what we do. We bring in a Dan or a Marc or Jackie, one of us, or both, or all, or whatever, and we do whatever we do.
Well, I think the thing is, it's interesting. John Kim has a hand up.
Okay. Unmute, John.
Dan, Marc, you really are a very strong component in the success of every mergers and acquisitions, because I'm an example. I did the stupidest thing to negotiate with these public entities directly ourselves to save $30, $50, $100,000 to pay an advisor, right? And it just went south, right? It's number one, it was such a stress on me and my wife as well, which was the partner as well. And I think we tried it 2-3 times to do it ourselves. We had a lot of companies eyeing on acquisition our company. And finally, we decided to just hire my advisor, John, who's the chairman of the board of a very large prepaid public company. And we hired him as an advisor like Kyle, what Kyle does, because you need to really be I'm gonna use the sports analogy. So you really need to find a quarterback to really manage the whole process, and who has that relationship with not only the buyer and experience enough to work with the seller as well. So in all my businesses, I'm all about sending the top girl or guy to close that deal and have everybody as a support structure. But going back to the mergers and acquisitions, oh my gosh, there's so many facets of the acquisition. And that's why it's such a priority to bring in a team of trusted advisors like all of you. And Andy and Doug, I mean, you guys all know, Jackie, you know, it's if the sellers and the buyers try to do it themselves, that's just a crash and burn, because we actually had access to companies that are doing $1 billion in business. She was doing nursing recruiting for national hospitals across the country, recruiting nurses. She was $1 billion women-owned company. And we have factories around the world. They're looking to acquire more factories. So we're seeing the same problems with these business owners. They think they're smart enough and they think they know it all. And it's actually a very emotional sale, because like Marc and Dan was saying, my wife and I, this is our baby. Our kids are still very young. I started very late. I have 2 beautiful kids, very blessed with them. But we still have the energy to really blow out the credit card processing business. We did not want to sell. So it's like our baby, right? But I'm very practical. But my wife is, she needed a lot of convincing. So we looked at our lives, and I put my foot down. I said, this is a great deal. Chances like this doesn't come in a lifetime, right? And the fact that we said yes to it, and we didn't realize COVID-19, the pandemic's going to happen in 2019. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? We're looking at each other. We can, it's just crazy. So I'm sorry, I'm talking a little too much, but it's just how important to have Kyle to be the business broker, to really manage the whole process. And Kyle does a wonderful job in bringing advisors together, depending on the deal. And, you know, everyone needs to really follow his lead because he has the relationships with the buyers and sellers. And he knows how to get to the goal line. So I just want to say, you know, it's just, you need to have a quarterback and really have Marc and Dan because it's a long process.
Can you imagine somebody trying to put together a resource group of everybody that's in this M&A alliance by themselves? Impossible. So I think that's one of the things that Kyle has done is he's brought this together and to make it really functional. But you know, the other thing is when we talk about people, I have a friend who sold his company for a fortune. And I was down with him in Florida. I went out for coffee with him in the morning. He came back. He says, now what the hell do I do for the rest of the day? There are a lot of people who live their life as their business, and now they have nothing, they haven't planned about that.
Mhm.
They haven't planned for the next step. That holds people back from making choices. So there are a lot of different things that go on that can get in the way. But if they're dealt with early, if you pick them up, if you mention them to a client, even before they mention it to you, or talk about somebody else, let me give you a list of the mistakes that the last 10 clients I had made and what it cost them in money, emotion, or reputation. Now you're selling not solutions, but you're selling mistakes, which people don't want to make. So it's who don't you want to be?
Hey, Dan,
I would also,
I want to get Jonathan in.
okay.
Jonathan, as you guys know, is a corporate attorney, has done tons of transactions, big and small. He's a people person as well. He connects with folks on the cellular level. I want to get Jonathan, you mind sharing from it? Because one thing I don't compromise on all is a good transaction attorney. I don't care. You can hire whatever CPA firm you want. Even CPA firm could be difficult too, but an attorney, because the chances are they have had a CPA since they started, they have a long-term relationship, but the chances are they have not sold their company before, and they need an attorney that can represent them in a transaction. So Jonathan, I know your clients hire you to get the job done, and they have their objectives, and you guide them along the process. Can you share your insight as it pertains to the topic at hand?
Sure. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for the kind words. An attorney is only useful if he has a good team around him. And Kyle and I, we were on the phone the other day chatting about the fact that business owners often don't know what to anticipate as the deal phases. And there's this deal phase where they think I'm going to show up with a finished contract all by myself without any input or elaboration or without any pushback. It's better I push back on my client to get it right than the other attorney or at the deal table. And oftentimes they don't realize that they have to participate. And they also don't realize that I need to be an advisor that tells them the good news and the bad news. And we try to fix the problems, but oftentimes it's the level of participation that boggles their mind. They're used to sending numbers to their CPA and getting tax returns back and spreadsheets, and the facts drive those analysis. And if there's any notes in the audit, well, yeah, the CFO would take care of that. But a lot of the corporate governance, the deal making, the contracts, especially when you have to break an egg to make an omelet. I've experienced deals where there are contracts that are poorly drafted that need to go back and get redrafted before we can put the company on the market because there's a loophole you can drive a truck through. How do you start that conversation? You have a vendor who's a key to your business and you want to sell, but you haven't locked them in properly. And it really is an existential moment when the business owner realizes that dealing with a transactional attorney isn't just hit print and print out the documents. We negotiated the sale price. My first question is, okay, how did you allocate the purchase price to goodwill and assets? Like, how is this allocation working? How is the non-compete working? Are you paying for that? So there are a lot of aspects that go into it, and whether there's an adjustment on the purchase price. And some of this is very emotional to them because it means one thing: the closing date gets further and further away. The more questions I ask, they don't realize that you can bring that closing date right up next to you, but that closing will break it'll go bust, or you'll leave money on the table. So, Kyle, I think that speaks to something we spoke about last week, where one of the strengths of this group is we have the ability, when we first meet a client, to unencumber them with the misconception that they don't have to participate. They think they built the business, they did their job. Okay, sell me. Kyle, sell me.
Right.
Sirota, make the documents. Doug, look at the HR. Let's get this done. And it just doesn't work that way. So maybe we can put together a program. We're talking with Kyle to do an onboarding process for our new clients.
Yeah, that's such a great, that's a just a,
Thanks,
such a
Jonathan.
great topic, Jonathan. It's like expectations, managing expectations. So many people expect answers to be provided for them. Lawyers are supposed to do their thing. Accountants are supposed to do their thing. Deals are supposed to be made for them. They can, the idea that that somebody who's selling a business can be a passive observer is so untrue. And setting that expectation is really helping them adjust psychologically to the process it's about to begin. And they have to be an active part of that. It's a beautiful point.
I have an exercise I use with clients, and I ask them to make a list of the top mistakes that their clients made before they became their client and what it cost them in money, emotion, and reputation. And then I suggest, rather than selling the solutions, they sell the mistakes. I have a lawyer who said to me, he says, I'm dealing with a client now who decided to forego having legal documents set up when he built his company, and that with his partner. They had a handshake. He said that handshake today is costing him $350,000 to get out of this deal. So, it's a balance. You don't want to be that guy with the $350,000 thing, and so it's how do we put up an instructional formula for somebody to say, listen, if you want to screw it up, we can really show you how to screw it up. But if you want to do it right, find out what everybody else did that didn't work, and don't do any of those things.
And something I'd like to add that I've found in a lot of deals is the professionals at the table may not be able to do the job of the other professionals, but they certainly know when somebody's asleep at the wheel. And that's why the team is important. If we bring Grassi in, the CPAs, I know them. Their reputation is great. So right then and there, I'm like, we've got Grassi at the table. We're going to be good. We've got Doug and we've got Serleman at the table. This is going to be clean. That level of confirmation and trust, our business owner clients, they don't have the same sphere of influence that we have.
That's right.
And it's really important.
Yeah, I want to get Anthony, Tony, and Ken here into the conversation. A lot of what you guys do is on the financial aspect of it, but what are some of the pain points that your clients see? Is it all just, hey, I'm not cash flowing? Do they get into the emotional side? So what happened? Well, my partner's stealing money, or I have this one might quit. I have to replace a HR manager. Like, what's some of the pain points you guys see in your respective businesses? Ken, Tony.
Sure. I could actually speak to us personally here at the firm. So we've only done 2 mergers in the last years, and not to say that we haven't looked at mergers. I mean, we'll be looking at 15, 20 firms at a time, throughout the country. And the reason why we only done two mergers in the last 6, 7 years is it comes down to culture for us. Culture drives everything we do. Listen, the money is the money, the dollars are the dollars. There have been many times where the dollars made a lot of sense, but the culture didn't. And, our leadership here at the firm, our partner, Lou Grassi, our managing partner, along with the executive committee and us partners, we took that to heart. We took a vote on it. And again, the money was great, but the culture wasn't there. So if you don't have that, I don't think you have anything. So, so when I speak to our clients, I have clients that are on a selling block right now. And their first choice is, are they going to sell to a strategic buyer, somebody in their space, or they're going to sell to a financial buyer, right? Those are two different complete animals, right? The financial buyer is going to strip your company down. They're going to tuck you into another entity, do some add-ons, and then flip you over, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Where a strategic buyer is he knows your business. You could leverage some of the expenses, some of the overheads. So you could have some savings that go to the bottom line right away, and you can grow. You're in the same space. So these are tough positions for a seller to figure out. The money may be better on the financial side, but not rather than the strategic. So again, these are things that come into play. And I'm on board at having someone like Dan and Marc in this process, because selling your baby, right? This is your baby that you've nurtured for 40 years now, 50 years, whatever the number is, and now you're going to part with it. So it's an emotional process. So it's I could talk to the financials, I could talk to the opportunities, I could talk about the pitfalls. I could also tell them I could be their psychologist. I play one on TV, but I would never give advice the way Dan or Marc would be able to. So that's sort of my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tony. Ken?
Well, I think one of the big things that Tony just said was we talked about a strategic buyer as opposed to a financial buyer. And I think that when I have clients that are looking to sell that have not really done the work to put their balance sheets in order and have the right EBITDAs and the rest of that, they're limited to a strategic buyer, because that's where they're going to get their most value. So what I find is that it's about getting them to align themselves with what their true goals are, because too often they think that they're making all this money and their business is worth $10 million when it's probably only worth 3, because they're living it and they're breathing it, and it's an emotional evaluation. And so creating value in those companies are often a challenge for me. And often we have to go with strategic buyers. I see more of those types of companies than I see the company where the owner is building his balance sheet no matter what I say, was willing to pay the taxes, and is playing 100% by the book. And we're in a position to sell to anybody, or even to go public at that point if we wanted to. I don't get that many of those companies. So it's all very emotional, and it's personal, because that business to them is no different than one of their children. And they have trouble separating the fact that the business is not personal. It's an asset. And and that's the biggest challenge.
Right. But getting them from that point of the emotional connection to that point where they can see the objective reality that it's a business, it's money, it's a transaction. That's the tricky part. And that really can involve a whole process with that person, if they're open to it, to in a way deal with the separation and the loss of their loved one, the business that they created. It's like a mourning process.
So Kyle, if you don't mind, I just want to expand on Ken, which is amazing. So he's been referring a lot of business to us, but I recently was contracted to help acquire a company. So they're actually a very large hard money lender based in New Jersey. They're doing about $150 million in business every year. And they're looking to really sell and start it again. So we actually set up a meeting with one of the largest investor groups in that business. And, they visited the principals, and the numbers made sense. They made a very strong offer, But the seller told me that, John, we do not want to give the business to them because that individual, that buyer, I mean, he's liquid, right? So he was very cocky. He said, you need to sell it to me. Otherwise, no one's going to give you this price. And that deal died just because of that. And that was a potential for me to broker that deal. Is a $350 million deal because we're actually going to do it again for them in about a year. So I was pissed off.
Hey, John, we could share a drink together. 'Cause I had a pretty large deal, $120 million deal like that died this year too. So you could share tears together. Hey, I want to get Rocco and Doug in here. So Rocco does a lot of bankruptcy and restructuring, and you guys know Doug is in the labor law from attorney's perspective. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. You guys had a lot of clients and a lot of horror stories, I'm sure you can share.
Sure. I'll go quickly. I think for the work that the M&A transactions that I'm working on, they're particularly difficult in situations where there's distressed assets being sold, because oftentimes it's just it's similar to some of the comments that have been raised here. The owners just, this is their baby, and they just, sometimes it takes a long time for them to realize that it's, it may not be because of business mismanagement or anything like that, but it could be because their business is just, it's outdated. They haven't done enough to kind of go with the flow and improve, and kind of react to differences in the way customers approach their line of business. And so a lot of what we do is try to manage the owner's expectations of what the value is in light of the maybe outdated mode of business that they've had for a number of years that worked, but doesn't work now, whether it's because Amazon came in, if it's a retail entity, or it's a different type of industry that is just they're doing what they did 20 years ago. It worked. So that takes a lot of time and effort to try to just manage that and explain to them that even in a situation where there's a lot of liabilities that have grown as a result of just kind of kicking the can down the road, and there's no real option in some instances but to file for Chapter 11, explaining that situation. And our goal there is to try to get the best deal possible. And sometimes in a way to do that is to go into a Chapter 11, which would give the ability to shed some liabilities, do a sale free and clear of liens. And in many instances, owners have personal guarantees. So if you can maximize the value by doing a structured sale with an auction process, it's a way to also personally benefit them. So it does, in the bankruptcy space, you see a lot of the same considerations, but you also have this issue about companies that have more debts than the assets, and where you're not selling the equity, you're just trying to make the best of a going concern business.
Thanks, Rocco. Good insight. Doug?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to touch upon Mark and Dan's presentation. So in the employment law world, I always have found, and I always advise employers along the lines as to treating an employee with respect at the time of termination. So how you treat an employee upon termination is going to be a function of whether that employee feels a need to run to a lawyer because they feel that their rights have been violated. And I think it's sort of the same thing when you're dealing with a merger and acquisition, which is, do you bring the employees, when do you bring the employees into the mix, and when do you make them feel comfortable in the fact that they're moving from a known situation to an unknown. And when you're dealing with that situation, you're going to there's the potential to be faced with employees who, because of the unknown, may feel a need to run to a competitor because that could be more of a known than the buyer of that entity. So, and again, I think that goes to the cultural issues and and when you bring the employees in. But again, if you're looking to retain the employees, retain key employees, you have to figure out when the best time to bring them into it. And I think that, it's really, an employment law issue, but it's also an HR issue. Jackie probably faces this as well, but I think it's an important consideration in the M&A world to bring in, somebody like Mark and Dan at the right time to retain key employees.
Thank you, Doug. Everything is complex. Everything is different, and the complexities that you just outlined don't have easy answers. But the human component is really something that has to be acknowledged and addressed in some hopefully positive way.
Yep.
It often ain't what it looks like.
It's interesting, Doug, what you said, because many times if they're going to company's going to reorganize, they'll come up with mechanism for the employees to go to consultants or whatever, coaches, to help them find a new job. So why wouldn't they do exactly what you said if they're going to have all of these employees that are going to a new job? They aren't going to work for the same person anymore. They absolutely need to get help in to help manage the employees. And somebody that's not in the company is even better, because they're going to feel more comfortable the employees are being able to work with Mark, Dan, Susan, whomever.
Great point, Jackie. I want to add Judy to the mix. So she actually has been part of a merger and is about to be part of another one. As Doug had mentioned, and Jackie, how has it been for you in the transfer from your previous company to XDD and so on? What's your feedback?
So the transfer from RVM to XDD was much different than what it looks like it's going to be. We were acquired in July. We were told the Friday before July 4th weekend, so like a week before that they called an all company meeting at 4 p.m. and said, you're being acquired as of July 1st. But they've furloughed a lot of people during the pandemic. So I'd say 50% of the employees have left. There was a lot of disgruntlement, a lot of upset people. It definitely caused some problems. A couple of overlapping people did get let go, but for the most part, people left because they were disgruntled at the company. The way they handled this merger is we're merging into a company called Concilio, and it's a merger. They handle much different client base than we do. And the CEO or the COO of XDD got on and said, hey, we're not looking to get rid of people. We're looking to merge our capabilities. We don't need 2 instances of relativity. We don't need 2 instances of, the technology. We're not looking to and then he went on to explain some other things and said, hey, I'm probably one of the people that'll end up leaving at a certain time. We're not looking to get rid of the frontline workers. So it's been a much different case. And they've been having constant meetings. Like there's a town hall already scheduled. They had a meeting, hey, XDD, meet Concilio, and vice versa. So it's been a much different experience, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, keep us posted. I mean, it's pretty a lot of uncertainty, but it looks like you guys have a good handle of it this time around. We have 2 minutes before we close off here. Anyone has any quick comments, and before Mark and Dan give their final remarks? I know Steve Alberti, you have a long tenure with Rampart. You probably see a lot of folks come and go. You have maybe 30 seconds just to share some stories from Rampart before we close things out. And you are on mute.
There we go. Many times I don't find out about the sale of the company until they contact me, or at the closing or after the closing. And I'm seeing that more now as some of my clients are aging out and selling their businesses or they're closing it down. So on the selling end, I often don't find out until after the transaction is done. But I do sometimes get involved when the clients are buying a company, and they'll have me take a look at the insurance coverages. We'll talk about the underwriting issues that need to be properly protected. So I see it from two different angles.
Okay, thank you, Steve. This is a really great conversation. I like everyone kind of shared their feedback and, from their perspective. We just at a 1:30 mark. We're going to close off now, but Dr. Marc, Dr. Dan, any final comments before we wrap things up?
Let me just say that the point Dan made at the very beginning, I want to reiterate that the sooner you include us for a discovery or a consultation, just to talk about what to expect. There's no way of knowing exactly. There's no way of predicting exactly what the ramifications or the variations on the theme may be, but just to get some insight that we may be able to share with you of what to anticipate, what to look for, and how to prevent things from going really off the tracks before they go off the tracks.
The only thing that I would like to add is about questions. I found that in some environments, it's much easier to ask questions privately. So my information, my phone number is in the chat. Be happy to talk to anybody about anything, but it's in confidence. It goes nowhere except for you and I. But frequently people who are alone at the top have no one to talk to, nobody to talk to at all. And that's the kind of things that I provide. I know Marc provides the same thing. So,
well, thank you. Because of you both, we have a lot of people to talk to. We have options here, right? So
you really do. That's wonderful what you built here, Kyle.
Yeah.
Because if someone went out to try to put together an effective team, what they'd have to go through in cost and time when you have it all together. So I think it's great.
It's because of you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate your efforts and insight. And thank you guys again. Have a great rest of your day. And be safe, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Good job, Marc.
Okay, Kyle, let me know about the referral.
Okay, will do.